has become the philosophic consensus, however you say the adjective. This has become the consensus that humane arguments against miracles are not sufficient, and that's why philosophers like Alvin Plantinga have now
Alvin Plantinga. Can you cite anybody who's not an apologist? William Lane Craig, Plantinga. I mean, we've already talked about in previous episodes his modal version of the ontological argument. I mean, can you cite somebody who's not already a Christian apologist who buys this stuff?
You want me to cite people?
Well, no, I don't. No, I don't because it wouldn't matter. To be fair, it wouldn't matter.
So, do you want objective criteria or not?
I want criteria that meets my standards of evidence.
What are your standards of evidence, and why are they superior to all others?
My standards of evidence are, I couldn't possibly list what they are, because for every claim requires different standards of evidence. Not all claims are created equal, as I explained to you before. However, the scientific method is probably the baseline that you could use for establishing this.
The scientific method is derived from philosophy, right?
Possibly. It's derived from actual experience.
Which is based on philosophy.
No, it's not based on philosophy. I mean, apart from everything is based on philosophy, you've got no basis for that.
Yeah, well, everything is based on philosophy.
Okay, fine. Thank you for proving me right.
No, hold on. Could I finish? Everything is based on philosophy, including science, which means that science is literally enslaved to philosophy.
No, it's not. No, it's not, and that is the dumbest stuff anybody's ever said in the show. Go back and watch the episode where I debated tag with Matt Slick, and we can talk about logical absolutes, because I'm not going through all that again. But philosophy, for example, has within it this idea that the senses, for example, are properly basic, something you're probably familiar with.
Yeah.
I reject that claim entirely. The reliability of the senses is constantly re-verified by their application and by their comparison with the other senses and with other information from other people's senses. That's why they're reliable, not because they're basic.
You're saying that the senses prove the senses. That's circular, and that's why
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not circular, because I don't stupidly oversimplify it all as the senses. If, for example, there is this cup here, I don't know if you can see it because you may not be watching the stream, and I can see it with my eyes, I can touch it with my hands, I can hear it. If it's a bottle of Coke, I could hear the carbonation escaping, etc. I can see the condensation, I can feel the temperature, I can taste it. It's the interworking of the senses that allow me to create an entire model. But I can also hand this same cup over to Don and have him assess it with his senses. And when we find that we are in agreement, that is where we converge on what we are somewhat justified in asserting as a shared reality. But all of this is far and away removed from the stuff you were talking about before. Science is not this assertion that everything is a slave to philosophy is both true and false, in the sense that everything is dependent on philosophy, because philosophy tries to get to the ultimate source of it. But it's not like if philosophers decided or came to a consensus that textual accounts of miracles should be considered reliable, that science would suddenly start claiming that lab results that reported, bunnies climbing out of test tubes should be taken at face value. That's just not the way reality works.
Okay, well, you refer to science as like testing miracles, quote unquote, and I do love science. I'm not trying to diss science in any way. I accept evolution. But
I don't know how much you accept it if you're going for miracles in text, but
well, I have an account devoted to defending it. But science presupposes methodological naturalism, and that's a principle I agree with.
Right.
Methodological naturalism,
yes.
but not metaphysical naturalism. So science literally is unable; it is banned from testing miracles. So for you to claim that
it's not banned from testing miracles. It's not banned from testing miracles. No, sir.
In method, it must be natural.
No, sir. In method, yes, in method. It's methodological naturalism, but that doesn't mean that it's banned from testing miracles. If the miracle is something that manifests within reality in any way, it is therefore detectable and measurable by naturalistic methods.
It is? Even if it happened in history?
No, not if it happens in history, because one of the founding principles of aspects of science is repeatability.
Yes, that's right. And so you're claiming that
it's about prediction, not post-diction.
You're right about that.
And I know I'm right. And I was right in 5 of the things in the video or so, I'm guessing, I'm making up a number, that you pointed out you wanted to argue against, and you said, oh, he's right, and then you argued against it. You know, we could have probably had a much better discussion if we'd have just picked a point and worked from it. But the funny thing is that when somebody directed me to the video, you seemed to complain about what I was reading from when I talked about the authorship of Matthew. Do you remember doing that?
I'm not sure exactly which point you're referring to there. But
you said, I don't know what he's reading from, but it doesn't seem to have it quite right.
No, I don't remember referring to you reading from something. It didn't seem like you were reading from anything. What I was mentioning...
No. Well, okay, I'm sorry that you don't recall what you said in your own video.
Okay,
but you did, and for the record, what I was reading from was the cover page for the book of Matthew in the New International Version of the Bible.
Okay.
And you objected to it. Now, that's fine. That's fine. You are entitled to object to it. I have my objections about it as well.
I was objecting to your use of the, like, you saying that it's internally anonymous, therefore we don't know who wrote it. I was objecting to that because I pointed out several examples of works which were internally anonymous.
The thing is, here's the thing. There's a difference between saying, give me your first example again, where we learned the authorship from Tertullian.
Tacitus' Annals.
Okay. There's a difference between accepting, like, for example, if Don wrote something, and I knew that he wrote it, you know, a particular essay on the website or whatever, but it was anonymous. And 10 years from now, when somebody comes up to me and says, hey, we want to write a history of, you know, what the ACA did, etc., and we've got this, you know, particular essay here that we liked and we'd like to use, can you tell me about it? And I say, Don Baker wrote it. And they record that, and 1,000 years from now, somebody comes along, there's absolutely no risk or price or cost or loss or anything worth tiddling about on my assertion that Don wrote it or on somebody else's assertion that I asserted that Don wrote it. Because the fact that he wrote it doesn't make any difference. It's much like the discussion of what did Socrates actually exist, or was it an invention of Plato to use as a mouthpiece? To me, it doesn't matter. Because what matters is the words that are attributed to him. Do they have value? Are they true? It doesn't matter to me at all whether or not Socrates existed. And so if a historian, you know, half of historians say, yes, he actually existed, and there's sufficient evidence for it, okay, fine. And if the other half of historians say, you know what, there's not sufficient evidence for it, so I don't accept that Socrates existed, that he was real and the author of this, I think it was Plato. Okay, fine, it makes no difference to me because the words that are spoken are either true or not true on their own.
Okay,
the authorship of Matthew is, or any of the Gospels, is such that the only sense in which it matters who the author was is whether or not we're going to claim that this was an eyewitness to it. Not that having an eyewitness necessarily makes the claims true, but there is definitely a reduction in reliability between an eyewitness and hearsay of an eyewitness. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I would agree, but I wouldn't say secondhand evidence is we can't totally throw out secondhand evidence.
And when did I say that?
I was just clarifying. I didn't say you said that or anything.
Okay, fair enough. I wouldn't say that either. So at least there's one little area that we agree on. So now we've got a book, for example, Matthew. In most books, most accounts that we would assess historically, it wouldn't matter to me who the author was. It wouldn't matter to anybody. It might be nice to know who the author was, and it could be reported by somebody else that this guy was an actual eyewitness. But then when we go and investigate, there is the issue of why would an eyewitness rely so heavily on other accounts, which I know you're eager to answer that. I'll let you get to it in a second. But when you address this, it's one thing to say that from the standpoint of normal historical methods and validation, I find that the claim of authorship is